You ready, Sarah?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Carrie Vanston. I am the Ambassador Officer for the Association of Corporate Growth San Antonio Austin chapter, and I'm also the moderator and director of our CEASAR Roundtable and Mastermind. We created a CEASAR in order to give a space for CEOs and other high-level executives at growth companies a place to land, and so we both have members and we also have non-members invited. So thank you so much for coming today. We thank very much our sponsors, Weaver, Dykema, Insperity, and Higher Better. They're what makes all of this possible. We also have a mastermind after we have the roundtable on the first Tuesday of the month. And then on the third Tuesday of the month, we have our CEASAR mastermind. And that's a smaller group that's more intimate, and each person gets a chance to share what's going on with them and what help and support they might need. Today, we have a couple of special guests. We have Cole Harmonson. He is the founder and CEO of Dare Capital Partners. He is also he founded Far West Capital, which had a successful bank exit in 2018 after supporting hundreds of companies' growth. And then in 1996, he founded State Bank's factoring and asset-based lending business, which was sold in 2007. He founded Dare in 2019. And then our co-presenter is Chris Carter. He's a co-founder of CEO of Stampede Consulting, and he's been doing that for several years. I mean, had been very successful at it. And before that, he co-founded Murphy Turner Associates. And I've known Cole for a long time. I met him when he was doing a conscious capitalism workshop like in 2015, and I loved what he had to say. I've always remembered him, and we've stayed in contact. He also is the one that really turned me on to Mastermind. We sat down at a coffee and he told me all about his Mastermind, and ever since then I've been doing masterminds similar to that. Cole, Chris, I really don't know too much about, but Cole talks about him very highly, and I'm looking forward to getting to know him more too. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Chris is at the airport, and he was kind enough to call in. And so he's got to leave about 12:25 or 12:30. So Cole is going to start things off and get their conversation going. Then after Chris gets off and their little presentation is over, we'll have our introductions as always. And then Cole will lead a discussion on the subject matter. So looking very forward to all of that. And with that, Cole, I will give it off to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and glad to be speaking on this topic with, it says Chris Carter, and Chris Carter may be a better speaker than Chris Turner, but you know, I don't know, but Chris and I have actually known each other for a very, very long time. That's okay. What I thought I would do is just say, why the heck are we talking about this topic? Let's just sort of start there. And Chris and I have been in Entrepreneurs Organization in the same forum together for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, something like that. And during the pandemic, etc., and all the upheaval and everything that happened during 2020, one of the things we do together as entrepreneurs is we float topics up that we're confused about. So there's always a lot to talk about. And this topic came up because you had 9, 10 people who are running businesses, leading organizations, dealing with culture. And all of a sudden they said, there's been this insertion into it's never been here before. And literally, I don't know what to do. And Chris and I were scratching our head, and we thought this is a good topic to talk about in general. And so at Dare Capital, I do a once a month webinar with our database. And so we said, what is this topic? What is it really? When I say this, okay, here's what I mean by this. Culture in general has never dealt with corporate culture has never really dealt with the insertion of sort of social issues at the level at which they've been inserted into the corporate conversation ever before. So when Carrie and I first started talking about this topic, she was like, whoa, hey, look, we're not trying to be political here. And I said, hey, good, because we're not either. We're not taking a side, and we're not telling people what to believe at all. But at the same time, what we're saying, and we're going to get into this, and we're going to talk about, our view on how to address these issues that have inserted themselves. It will take you to have some courage, and to have some, sort of conviction behind some of your beliefs. Dare Capital, part of how I got the name for Dare Capital was reading Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. And one of her favorite quotes that I like to talk about is, she says, integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them. So that's what we're talking about today. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good little intro there. Does anybody have any questions on just that part, since it's such a small group, on what we're trying to cover today? Got it? Okay, fantastic. And the reason why Chris and I decided to cover this topic, which mostly has to do with culture and values and scaling a business, is because Chris's company went from 6 employees to 2,400 in 2020. So going from 6 to 2,400, you have to have, I think, what he says is, armor up your culture, because you literally can't do it any other way. And so we're going to get his experience around that topic. And so maybe we can kind of start there. Chris, maybe talk about 2020, talk about how you went from zero to hero in that year, and continue to do so on some topics around your culture. And we'll start with that, and then we'll dig into the specifics of the problem and what to do about it.
And happy to be here. Honored to be with a bunch of fellow entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders. My first apology is that I am at DFW Airport, so I'll try to spare you. I'm trying to go on mute, so I'll spare you some of the airport background noise. But yeah, I mean, we have essentially we're we talk about delivering elite workforce for sales and marketing programs. And what that really distills down to is that we do a lot of door-to-door sales, and we do a lot of it. It's actually predominantly in the political space, but not exclusively. And so, as you might imagine, and again, apologies for the background noise, but if you can imagine back in March of 2020, if you're in the business of knocking on doors across the country, and these are millions and millions of doors. Ultimately, we knocked on over 4 million doors and had over 1.1 million live conversations with people across 8 states. So there was a lot of kind of mano-a-mano contact with people in the middle of a pandemic. And back in March, I literally thought that this was going to be an extinction event. I thought we were going to be done. And for a couple of weeks, I panicked. Well, panic's the wrong word, but I was concerned about the future of the business. And like most of you guys know, men and women on this call, Cole certainly knows it's not about me or about us. It's about the team, and really our team and our culture pulled us through. And strangely enough, I know you guys are going to do mastermind later on. I'm a big mastermind fan myself, and I had goals that I was being held accountable to all year. And while we got there in a different way, we hit every goal that we had set out at the end of 2019 in terms of gross revenue and everything else. And that's an amazing thing. There's some grace out there. There's something going on when we can go through a year like this and still deliver on the goals that we set in front of ourselves. So that's my 2020 story.
It's a good story. So when we talk about the problem, okay, when we've said this, and we use this word wokeness to describe the problem. Chris, tell us what you think that means inside of corporate culture, and let's dig in on the problem a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, there are a lot of business leaders either listening now or will be listening, in a future version of this call. We all work to build some kind of culture. We at least talk about that. Maybe we pay lip service to it sometimes, but from time to time, we'll put it on the wall. We'll have a quarterly meeting around these things, or maybe some people like us in our business. I mean, we live it and breathe it every single day. Every single person in my company knows the 5 core values by heart. They know what they're all about. We reward, we hire, we fire, we do everything based on these core values. And I think had we not been very serious about it, and very non-trite and very non-boilerplate about our core values, with 2,400 employees and scaling from literally 6 in Q1 to 2,400 in Q3 and managing them and I think delivering excellence when we're not able to see them every day. I mean, these aren't people sitting in offices. This is remote labor. So we can't scrutinize their every second activity. And had we not armored up our culture and made it real, I think the push and the pull and the tug of American society would have destroyed us. And by that, I mean, the allure, some would say the addiction to social media platforms, just major media news. And I'm not talking about the particular direction of the news. I'm just talking about the news in general. I think most of us as business owners think that we hire people, and that basically means that since Henry Ford's days, Henry Ford, remember, established the 5-day work week and the 9-to-5 work day. Since that time, business owners have thought that that time is ours. That the workers, our employees are there working for us during that period. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think we are competing for our labor seconds from our own employees with, kind of insurgent social media platforms, technology platforms, gaming platforms. I mean, who knows what it is, but we're fighting for their attention. We're fighting for their loyalty. We're fighting for their productivity every second of the day. And I think in our world, we just kind of asserted that this time must be ours. We're paying for it. We need it. And we try to operationalize around the threats that were coming from outside. And we, again, the term I use is armored up our culture, and we made it work for us very much so. And I think we delivered just some, again, my work is kind of arcane, but the productivity numbers were off the charts. And had we, again, not taken culture seriously, we would have been undermined all over the country.
Yeah, you and I had it was kind of eye-opening. One of our forum mates, female CEO, who is, extremely apolitical person. It's a software business. It serves a particular niche in the world. And she had 2 of her employees approach her and basically say, hey, I think we should be doing XYZ social program. And another employee was like, no, we need to be doing ABC. And there was a dispute between the 2 of them, and she's expected to moderate this, obviously. And was extremely confused about, like, hey, this is not, we're here to build software. We're here to serve our customers. We're here to serve our team. We're here to do good things in the world, etc. And honestly, I haven't really thought about these issues that much, and I can't put together something that is coherent for the business. Although it seems as though, because from the outside looking in, again, Chris referenced social media, that CEOs, leaders in businesses are now expected to be some sort of social activist inside of their company, or taking a particular position on particular issues, or if you're not, there's something wrong with you, etc. And so, specific example of that, I think that serves a really good specific example of that. So, Chris said that that quote from The Matrix. There's something wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. You don't really know. You don't know what to say or what to do, but you know that there was a before demarcation and an after demarcation. And so, again, how do you handle this? And Chris talked about this a lot in armoring up your culture and what's sort of needed first, in terms of first principles, if we can go back to that and having that conversation. And again, the thing that we sort of boiled it down to and came up with was, first of all, you have to have courage to have these conversations, again, from wherever you stand as a business owner. You're going to have courage there. And Chris for years has been talking to me about this principle of, he calls it FOG, fear, obligation, and guilt. And what is that? Chris, go into that for us and talk to us about FOG-based decisions and the courage that's needed to start to begin to have some of these conversations.
Yeah, and I don't even know how I and again, apologies for the background, but I don't even know how I came to this. It was just, a life of study and a life of making every mistake in leadership you could possibly make. And at one point I came across this acronym, FOG, FOG, fear, obligation, guilt. And what I've really dialed in on personally is that every single time I've made a decision based on one of those things, things have gone awry, whether it's in the near term or the long term. It has never worked out financially, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. Every single time I make a fear-based decision, it leads to some kind of cataclysm. So I really try to find, my challenge in life is to find the courageous path. And sometimes it's very inobvious. And I spend a lot of time trying to find out what really is that. And one of the tools that I've kind of employed this year that's new is I've tried to create some bandwidth in my life to really get clarity on issues like this, right? So how to find the courageous path? Well, that takes some bandwidth. I mean, that you need to free up some headspace around that, and you need to decloud your mind. And how do we engage on these issues, these cultural issues in our companies? Well, you need to have some bandwidth for that kind of stuff, right? I mean, there is, and Cole and I have talked about this, guys, but there is some drama worth engaging in. And I know as business leaders, my favorite tactic for 15 years of business was to layer myself away from drama. If there was a drama person in the business that I could fire, I'd fire them. If I, for some reason, thought I couldn't fire them, I would layer them. And I would create layers upon layers upon layers and distance myself from drama. And I think I've realized this year is that, especially in this kind of woke era, that there's some drama that we need to engage with, that we should engage with, and that will benefit us to engage with. And so my little tactic this year that I hope is a good takeaway for everybody is, and it won't be shocking, you've heard other people do it, but about 7 months ago now, I deleted every social media app off my phone. I deleted my Facebook accounts. I didn't half-ass it. I just wholesale chopped it off, deleted all the data that was on there, didn't save anything, deleted Instagram, deleted Pinterest, deleted whatever, Twitter. And I wasn't I wasn't a power user of any of those platforms, but it was highly distracting. And then I frankly stopped going to news platforms because I was being burdened every morning by, a train wreck that happened in India or Uganda or somewhere, Mexico. And these are all terrible things that happen around the world all the time. But I call them now very important, but not relevant to my daily life. And by removing or excising all of that distraction from the social media platforms, gaming platforms, again, major news sites, what I found this year is that I was able to free up a lot of personal bandwidth so that I can engage with some of this drama. And drama could be anything from woke culture to someone's having a tough day, to someone's mother just passed away, to one of my team members. When you have 2,400 team members, you got a lot of stuff going on. And that for me was making that move this year. It wasn't that hard, first of all, and I think it paid huge dividends, because I think if you talk to my team members, especially my direct reports, they would tell you that I probably had more time for them this year than I'd ever had, that I was able to have focused conversations with them about their issues that are very relevant to them to kind of get them back in the game. And whereas in the past, I was so overloaded by all this stuff going on that I basically gave everybody the Heisman. I put them at arm's length and I just said, hey, I can't deal with your shit today. I got my own shit. But my shit was literally just reading the news. So it was a big leap forward, I think. Again, it may not be for everybody, but for me, it worked very well this year.
So I think the second thing that you need to realize in having these conversations is that this is a commercial, by the way, for Brene Brown. So she says that to get to courage, you have to have vulnerability. And the definition of her vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So in other words, people are not going to like you. And they're going to be upset, and they're not going to agree with you, and they may even label you. Actually, I wrote a blog about this and sent it out to my database, and I think I got called a cult member or something like that, for whatever I was saying. So I was like, perfect. I mean, I know that is going to come back. It's kind of part of the deal. But as she says, like the man in the arena, if you're not getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. So, we're not, again, trying to tell people what to believe or what to do. What we're saying is you have to investigate these issues for yourself. So, Chris, how you doing on time, brother?
I got a couple more minutes left, and so fire away if you've got maybe a final question or anything I can share.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay, well, let's talk about, the next thing is okay, so you have to get to this version of quote unquote truth for yourself inside the business. And that involves your homework around your own core values, around maybe even topics like capitalism or conscious capitalism, or whatever it is that you want, right? Whatever it is that's going to float your boat, that you stand for inside your business. What did that look like for you, Chris? How did you do that? How did you come up with that? What was your process? 2 minutes or less. Go.
Yeah, for sure. And look, this is everything to us. I mean, the core values we have, again, there are 5 of them. Everybody knows them. I could recite them to you right now. I can tell you what they all mean. Everybody can do that in our business. And it meant for us that we could remote lead 2,400 people across 8 different states doing pretty complex sales interactions with millions and millions of Americans in the middle of a pandemic. And by the way, we only had 1 positive COVID test all year out of all of that. And we had 7 team members quarantined as a result of that positive test. And we had no consumers and no voters report that we had spread COVID, which is an amazing accomplishment by my team, not by me, but by my team. And the core values enabled that to happen, and also to fend off distraction from these, again, let's just use a social media platform, for instance. If you have your core values on the wall in your business, that's great. If you talk about them in your meetings, that's awesome. If they're real to you, you hire by them, you fire by them, that's amazing. If everybody can recite them in order, including the CEO, that's even better, because most CEOs can't recite their own core values because they were made by a corporate consultant typically. But if you can do all that stuff, that's great. But I think the revelation this year for me was that because of the power of these social media platforms to introduce themselves into your business all day, their cultures, not saying they're bad cultures, but they're not your culture. Their cultures are being introduced into your workplace. So I think that's maybe the big revelation, is to say, holy cow, maybe my culture isn't actually my culture. If my staff is spending 2.5 hours a day on social media platforms, maybe what's the culture of Facebook? Go look at their core values, and you might start seeing, what's causing fractures in your business. Because again, your employees are living someone else's core values in your business. And so it's affecting adoption. It's affecting all kinds of interpersonal issues in your company potentially. So with us, I mean, just to kind of leave you all with our story, it was very simple. We were looking for something that we would never lose faith in, never lose heart in. And what we came to, because we have a large number of military veterans and military family members as our staff, we put love our veterans as our #1 core value. So everything for us revolves around that #1 core value, love our vets. It means we hire them. It means we sometimes don't hire them if we're going to be a bad fit for them and we know it. It means supporting charitable organizations that support vets. It means reaching out and just helping a military family if they just need something, right? It means buying them coffee if there's a Korean War vet at Starbucks. Whatever it is, this is what we do. This is who we are. And we literally came to it because core values have to be actual, right? It has to not be aspirational. And I was looking across the table in a multi-hour discussion about core values, and I was looking at a Army Ranger vet, Command Sergeant Major, and I was just looking him in the eye and say, man, this, you're a hero to me, and we need to do things for people like you. And that was, I guess, 6-7 years ago now, and we've hired thousands of veterans and mill family members since then. And then the other core values just came off of it. One team, one fight. Sounds very, team-oriented, military. Get you done, kick ass. That's one of ours as well. Undivided attention, minimizes distraction in our business, and then express gratitude. I mean, we say thank you internally, externally, and we think these things. And I guess this would be my last thing to mention to the leaders that are on the call. Our core values aren't just meant to guide quality actions inside of our business. We talk about them as a better way to live life, right? Expressing gratitude for living in this country, having what we all have, our families, our friends. Even in the middle of a pandemic, we are the most blessed people on this planet. And so when I talk about gratitude in the business, I talk to my own staff about how this is something they can carry forward into their personal lives, and that they should do it, which I think is a topic that Cole will pick up on as I jump off. But the question is, there's a lot of pressure raising kids to back off and let the system raise your kids. And I think there's a lot of pressure on CEOs to back off and let the society raise your company, if you will. And I disagree with that. I think society needs us to lead our organizations as we see fit. It was born out of our hearts and minds and the hearts and minds of our team. And this is our opportunity to impact society. So maybe I'll leave you with that, the courage to take action within your businesses, feel confident that you've built something great and that people are attracted to it. And there's no cause or reason to feel guilty or disconcerted by the fact that you want to maintain that culture and you want to strengthen that culture, and you don't want it blended down by factors outside of that culture. So that would be my final message, and also one of gratitude for having me on. And I'm going to hop on a plane and go to Amelia Island, Florida, for a couple days. But it is a great honor to be with you and be on this entrepreneurial journey with you guys. So.
If you don't mind, I'll give out your email so that if anybody has any questions or comments that they can reach out to you. Absolutely.
Happy to take, I'll have an interaction with any of you guys anytime. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
And thank you, Cole, too. I'm going to go ahead and go into introductions, and then I'll hand it back over to Cole. We always introduce, everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves, and we are going to start with Susan Vaughn introducing ACG, and she is now the president-elect of ACG Austin San Antonio. So yay, Susan, congratulations.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Happy New Year. I know we all have extra special expectations for 2021. I know that I do for ACG and for life in general, but they look a little different than what they might normally. So excited just to see what unfolds, but really excited to have Carrie continue this group. It's been such a really valuable asset to ACG, I think, to get this off the ground. It's been something that has been long desired, and Carrie really mobilized and implemented and executed, and here we are. So thank you for that. Our group, Cole, is a little smaller than normal because of the holidays. So thank you so much for having patience with us in that area, but we're so pleased to have you. Just a quick reminder, and then we'll get on with the rest of the introductions. We've got a really exciting event coming up in January. It's January 21st from 1:30 to 3 p.m. It is an event that's focused on trends in healthcare investing. It's a collaborative event with ACG Austin San Antonio, along with San Diego chapter, a Tennessee chapter, DFW chapter, and Houston chapter. We already have 170 attendees registered for this. So it's going to be well attended. It's going to be an amazing conversation. There'll be 3 PE professionals that are focused on investing in healthcare. And then we've got 3 investment bankers also on the panel that are responsible for introducing opportunities for healthcare investment. I just, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in this space. I think it's obvious why the focus is on healthcare. And so just to see what perspective that these professionals will bring around M&A and investment community, I'm just really eager to hear. So thank you all again. Happy New Year. I'm with Insperity. I didn't say that, but Insperity is a sponsor of ACG, which I truly appreciate. And Insperity is a national provider of outsourced HR, employee benefits, and employer technology. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you, Susan. I'm Carrie Vanston. I'm the Alligator Wrangler, the CEO of the Alligator Wrangler, and I help leaders that are up to their necks in alligators. I help them increase their mindset and leadership skills and levels so that they can achieve their goals quicker and with less stress and more confidence. If anybody would like to have a brainstorming session around 2021, I would love to give you a free session and talk a little bit more about that. So I'm so pleased to have this. This is our 6 months. We've been doing this for 6 months now. So really do appreciate everybody for being part of this. And our really strong foundational people are here today. So thank you very much for that. I hope you had a wonderful holiday too. And Charu, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you, Carrie. So quickly, guys, I'll keep it short and brief, Carrie. My name is Charu Plavanekar. Currently, we have 2 business initiatives. One is innovative consulting, which comes from the background of cybersecurity and compliance consulting. And our new venture is Securitain, which is our e-learning platform. E-learning platform is going live from this week, so probably we'll see a lot of stuff happening in the different areas from the next week onwards. LinkedIn, marketing, everything, SEO, all this is going to happen. And hoping for the best on the early response I've received. And just to take the opportunity to mention it to you guys, these are all my close friends here. So need your blessings that it all goes very well from the next week and it grows much further. And we do have good tie-ups with 6 billion organizations and others, bankers and some banking associations helping us to get up and running immediately from the next week. With that being said, briefly my background, I spent almost 17 years in Austin now. Having studied in Austin and seen Austin growing, I'm really glad that I happened to choose Austin and flew from New York to settle down here. I'm very happy with the decision. With background, I'm qualified with both financial background as well as the technology side of the world too. So kind of advantage to speak both the languages, understand deep down accounting aspect, financial aspect, as well as able to speak on the hardcore technology, being in the cybersecurity space. I do find it very beneficial because it's very easy to understand while speaking with the people from what background they're coming from or what are the areas they want to speak about. It helps a lot in decision making too. I'm thankful to Carrie. I've been part of this group from the day one. I have not missed a single session or maybe one at least. I don't think so. I missed any one. It's quite a good journey. Number of people I met during this particular events come from a different background. And it's always interesting to hear different perspectives. So kind of it has become a close family here by meeting some people again. So I'm really glad to see all of you guys once again in the new year and hope for the best for the rest of the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charu. That reminds me, everybody be sure to put your contact information in the chat box. Members of ACG get a list of the attendees with all the details. So that's a benefit for being a member, but everybody, if you share in your chat, that everybody will have your contact information and that won't be an issue. Susan, do you want to tell any of the other benefits that you get for being ACG member?
Well, sure. I think most of you are familiar, but there are many. Obviously, they look a little different again than they used to, but we still have wonderful networking. Sarah has done a fantastic job of pulling together all the, the talents and the people inside of ACG that can bring together great programming and great speakers like Cole. And we have had some amazing events online. We miss seeing each other, of course, in person, but we have monthly events. Typically speaking, we have a lot of networking events. Some of those are members only. And so one of the biggest things that I think is an advantage is for a nominal amount, you have access to professionals that are dealing with middle market concerns, whether they're on the investment side or the operator side or the service provider side. You've got the ability to interact with persons and professionals across the United States. You have direct contact information through the directory, which is online. And Sarah, what am I forgetting? There's so many benefits.
There are. One other thing I wanted to mention is we have another summit coming up that ACG Global is putting on the 27th of January. You must be a member to be able to attend. But those are phenomenal. The first summit was in June. There was another one in November. And now this one is the winter summit. So definitely keep that on your calendar if you have that opportunity to attend. Those are really valuable as well.
Thank you, Sarah. So that's a great example of a members only event. And I can tell you personally from experiencing them that I was able to set one-on-one meetings. You can fill up your calendar with meetings with people that you might not otherwise be able to get FaceTime with. And I mean literal FaceTime, virtually, but opens up the opportunity for face-to-face later down the road.
Great, thank you. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Turpin. Chronological order. I was a military veteran once upon a time, way back when.
Thank you.
In an era when people had draft numbers. So I joined and I was very blessed. I wound up working at the White House for a while, which certainly helped me get to graduate school in England. Most people don't have reference letters from the White House in their graduate application package. Went on to become a banker and then became the treasurer at a company here in Austin called Temple Inland. It was about $5 billion multi-line business that included a bank, mortgage company, real estate investments, and multi phases of manufacturing and things that relate to paper and forest products. I also was the chief financial officer for the standalone independently managed real estate company, and I ran a little turnaround for them on the side along with everything else. It was a fun ride. Carl Icahn came along. The company is no more. And I have done a little bit of consulting work at Peleus Group. I am the sole surviving member of a partnership which once started. And the certain people you only learn about after you work with them for a while. And my partners sort of faded away for various undisclosed personal issues they had. And my consolation booby prize, if you will, was that I wound up being the owner of a restaurant and catering business, which I still own, although I am hopeful to have it sold one of these days here in Austin. And as I say, I do some advisory work. 2019, I spent most of that year doing an odd advisory job. I was the interim consulting, whatever you want to call it, chief of staff for the Salvation Army here in Central Texas. Not quite as dramatic as it sounds. I just finished 25 years on the board there, including a pretty good stint as the chairman and vice chairman once upon a time. So I was a known entity, and they really needed some management help. Not all officers in Salvation Army equally gifted in social work and management, and we had more of a social worker as opposed to a manager. And some of the other board members came and said, please help out. So anyhow, that's what I do. I'm interested in kind of today's comment, and Cole, if you and I have a chance in the comment section. I feel somewhat like a dinosaur because when I went to graduate school in London, it was the time of great Labor Party social upheaval. Everybody should do something with their assets because I tell them to, kind of mindset. So what we're seeing in this country, I saw decades ago in another place. And I spent 3 years as a
Wow.
banker in France, and I saw somewhat the same thing there too. I was there during a transition from a more conservative to a socialist government. That was an interesting observational exercise as well, plus several other countries in Europe that I was responsible for. So that's kind of me at the moment. And always looking for people who want to ask basic questions. Those are not very comfortable questions to have to answer for a lot of people, but when I get someone's attention, they go, wow, that is, quote, very insightful. And I'm going, that's management 101, but sometimes people want to skip over their freshman class. So
Thanks, David.
that's it for the moment.
Thanks, David. Andy?
Well, Happy New Year, and hi to everyone. My name is Andy Fogarasi. I'm the CEO of a company called Austin Beta that I started about 20 years ago, a consulting company, technology consulting originally. Now I'm doing more operations, supply chain, e-commerce consulting, because that's a background that I have in a company I started here in Austin from scratch and grew to about 100 employees and 20+ million in sales. It still continues today now after about 18 years, even though I've sold my shares. Now I'm kind of ramping my efforts back up to get more involved, and kind of along Dave's lines, I get surprised about how many companies don't understand or aren't founded in those basic principles. They don't understand their P&L numbers. They don't understand how to set up their companies properly. Part of that comes from being involved with an accelerator for the past 6 months and really seeing that firsthand through so many of these startup companies that have a great idea, but again, don't know how to put those key fundamentals in place. So I'm really getting much more excited now, more ramped up, and wanting to go help, realizing how the skills that I've used over the past 20, 30 years, setting up supply chain and e-commerce and fundamental operations in different places, even in Europe, are still so critical and so important and so missed in so many companies. So, and this discussion today is kind of interesting. One of my beliefs is that for any company, there are 3 fundamental stakeholders: the customer, the shareholder or owner, and of course the employee. And no company exists without a minimum of those 3 people. And if there's any one of those areas where you're failing to take care of one of those shareholders, that's where you end up spending the most of your time, because you've failed to set the expectations and deliver in those areas. And I think right now, the employee area seems to be stepping up very, very strongly from a social perspective and demanding that they be recognized as a shareholder and their values and opinions be considered. And I think the wise business owner needs to recognize that is a relationship, a two-way street of both sides, the company and the employee, wanting to exchange something of value for something in return. So now we're at a key point where we have to renegotiate and understand and listen and set those expectations in both directions. So I think that's what we're talking about today.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Edwin?
Yes, Happy New Year to everybody. Glad to be here. I am Edwin De Angel, the founder of Invention Matters. In my past life, I did chip design in many of the companies here in town for quite some time, and eventually moved more towards intellectual property on the innovation side of things. Got tired of fighting the Moore's law and realized that there was more value into actually understanding technology and tackling from the intellectual property side. At Invention Matters, we focus on patents, mostly, but we also look into trade secrets and some other areas. Our main emphasis is in doing licensing. We also do prosecution of patents, but we do it in a way that is the way that the big boys play. We use a group of subject matter experts that are in-house, and we actually customize future patents based on their competitors towards infringement. And those are the patents that you see 2 or 3 years later on that get settled for quite a bit of money. So basically is target prosecution, very specialized, especially for technology companies that are very active in terms of litigation or optimizing the value in their portfolios. For some other companies, we actually take a look to their licensing portfolio, and we actually do monetizing campaigns or actually help them on their licensing effort. And the way that we do that is in a couple of ways. In terms of a strategic position, we have AI deep learning tools that are capable of analyzing patent portfolios of the competition. And they can actually grumble and digest thousands of patents from multiple companies at the same time and build heat maps that actually compare head to head where those companies are putting the money and where the opportunity actually is. And that way we can actually advise them into where they should focus and put their money. So that's one area. The other area is actually evaluation. And evaluation, what we do is that we are actually capable of looking at similar deals that have happened in the marketplace and actually give them the common numbers on what a similar deal to what they're entertaining should look like and give them the range and so on. So that in a nutshell is kind of the areas that we play, is more on the monetizing, licensing, asserting IP. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Edwin. Sarah?
I didn't expect to be called on. Hi. It's nice to see you all. Happy New Year. Glad that we're kicking off this year on a great start with this program. This is the start of the 15th year for me with ACG, and I'm happy to be here to answer any questions anybody has, and I'll turn it back over to Carrie.
Sarah is our ACG executive, and she just does a fantastic job. I work with her on everything I do, Susan and I do on this CEASAR, and she's always just there handling all sorts of stuff in the background. So appreciate you. Cole, let me think, what else? Oh, I wanted to real quick share the screen. Oh my gosh, where is it? Where did it go? Just a second. Let me see if I can get it to work. Just a second. Try it again. Stop. Share. There it is. I wanted to get this slide up again with Chris Turner and Cole Harmonson, since I had it spelled wrong. I had the wrong name before. So there, I feel better. Okay, now we're going to go back to Cole Harmonson, and he can talk a little bit. I'd love for you to give a little bit more information about yourself too, Cole, and then lead us in a conversation about your topic today. We would love to have you do that.
Well, I was born in Georgia. No, I won't go there. I'm in the lending business, and I've been in the lending business since 1996. And I've helped thousands of companies during that time. And it's mostly about the soft stuff, you know, for me anyway, in terms of purpose and mission and vision and values and why we're doing what we're doing. Why do we wake up in the morning? Why do we go to work? Why do we do what we do? I love what Andy was talking about in conscious capitalism, which is again how Carrie and I met a while back, one of the 4 principles, that tenets that is foundational there is called stakeholder orientation, and meaning that in all of the stakeholders that are for the company's operation, if you will, for lack of a better term, the decisions to the best ability of the management team have to be ecological, meaning not ecological environment, ecological in your stakeholder environment. So you can't, that's not the right word. There are trade-offs that have to be made sometimes, as we all know as leaders, but to the best of our ability, that we're holding everyone that we touch in terms of our businesses with the best intent, and hopefully we can make those outcomes as meaningful as possible for each particular constituency, if you will. So I love that. I love that thought process. Maybe we could just go to questions real quick. I mean, I'm good to stay on however long you guys want to stay on, but there was some chat box going on. Who wants to start there?
Cole, everybody can just unmute, because since we're so small, if you want to just jump in or do the chat box. But Cole, we have a hard stop at 1:15. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
So 1:15 would be fantastic.
Okay.
Let's see. I do see Chris. What is the ownership of your company?
Now, I asked that question. Cole, do you happen to know if Chris is the sole owner of his company or what his investor structure is?
Good question. Yeah, it's him and his wife. Yeah, just him and his wife.
You know, and that comes up when you talk about stakeholders. I mean, I hate to sound like the old dinosaur, but this is not new. It was around when I went to graduate school. Lots of discussions about people playing British labor unionists and what else have you in role modeling exercises. But much of the balance of the 3 things that you were talking about revolves, in my opinion, around the ownership. I have this operation and this methodology I use for people on how to evaluate any new opportunity, new line of business, a new business, growth expansion, what else have you. And it gets around to capital. And when Temple Inland was spinning off its national real estate management company, I did not go with that company, but I went to the CEO and said, I'll be happy to run this program for you. And he knew what it was. I said, it'll take either 20 minutes or 2 hours. 20 minutes because no one will get it, or 2 hours because diminishing returns will set in. Well, about 18 minutes in, somebody got it, everybody else followed along, and we quit after an hour and 50 minutes. But early on, I asked somebody, what is capital? And this was a bunch of real estate guys who, up until then, they were all worried about the left-hand side of the balance sheet. It was all assets. Running a business, you know, how you fund it, all the other components of it was not something they worried about. They needed money. They figuratively sent me a memo. So I asked, what's capital? And there was this sort of silence around tables, probably 12 or 15 guys. And they said, this is another one of Dave's trick questions. And finally, the old pro in the group, who had made a lot of money in real estate before we lured him in to run the business for a while, said, that's the money that someone gives you so you can manage the business. And later on, the guys are throwing around the word value with the same lack of understanding. So I said, okay, what's value? And another broad silence. And the old guy, the old pro, who wasn't very old, I mean, he looked like he's 30, he's probably 55, says, that's whatever the guy who gave you the money says it is. So when you get into these valuation, value creation, value sharing issues between stakeholders, I tend to ask people, so how does the ownership weigh in with all those situations? Because ultimately, if you are a passive owner of a business, you went in with certain expectation about how it's going to be managed. Can you address that?
No. That was like a great, I think you addressed it really well. I don't know if there's anything more to say about it.
Well, I mean, you do have, you can't have all your employees walk out, and if your customers don't buy your product, then you've got a problem. But those are addressable issues.
Shorten your question a little bit more, please.
What's the role of the ownership stake in balancing the three components you're talking about?
Okay. Yeah, good question. You know, the way that I look at it is, again, go back to the conscious capitalism, stakeholder orientation sort of conversation, and to add to what Andy was saying, there's a few more groups, you know, in that: customers, employees, and owners. There's community, right? There's whatever you want to include in terms of what are you addressing. You know, for us, we have our clients. We also have, we buy receivables, so we also have the people that are actually paying us are a very important group of people that we need to learn how to treat really well. And so I don't necessarily think that you have to answer everyone's questions all the time. You do have to listen, though, and that's one of the things that we were talking about in our last conversation around this, is the idea of courageous respect. You have to put your own mask on first as the shareholder, right? It's the same thing as being on an airplane. If you're not taking care of you, if you're not taking care of the company, if you're not making sure that you're profitable, if you're not making sure that you have the right amount of capital, et cetera, for your company, well, then there's no company for people to complain about, right? So that's the first job, I think, is put your mask on first as the shareholder. Make sure that, you know, we're getting the right kind of return, that we're profitable, that we're doing what we need to do there. You know, after that, I think it's compassion, tolerance, and patience are absolutely 100% required, because you cannot, as the ownership group, assume that everyone knows what you know / feels how you feel or thinks how you think. If they did, they would own the company, not you. And so they're there for a particular reason that, you know, usually involves paying their bills, living their lives, being the best person that they can. Again, we employed a tool when I was at Far West called Workify, which is a startup local here in Austin from Dustin Wells and Stephen Huerta. And it's a tool for listening really to your culture, and it's anonymous feedback, etc. So we gave people every quarter the 100% chance to share whatever they wanted to. We did have topics that we went around throughout the year, but it was more of an ongoing conversation where I would get up in front of the company and say, hey, here's what you said. I can't do anything about that, by the way. I'm not a magician. I'll work on it. We'll work on it together. You bring solutions to the table and we'll work on it together. But it's more of a listening tool. So listen first, show empathy, put your own mask on, and you got to have lots of, you know, empathy and patience with the group of employees / you know, folks that are, again, they've got these questions. And like Chris pointed out, they're on social media being bombarded by, you should believe this, you should believe that, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, or you're not a good person. Right? So, you know, when you wake up in the morning and come to work, what is the responsibility of the company to put forth its own values and say, here's what we're about? Yeah. Does that answer your question, David?
Well, it's just, I mean, it is a never-ending, never ceased, never closed out conversation.
Yep.
As long as there are people in organizations and they have their different concepts of who's responsible for what and how smart they are or not, and whether they should be the center of the universe, we'll always have this conversation. But I'm always interested. Somebody's thought about it. I'm always interested to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, and we used another tool as well called Chorus, which is another local Austin startup company, KHORUS, which is a cascading goal system. It's also HR management, strategy, tactics, etc. You hear a lot about OKRs. You hear a lot about these entrepreneurial operating systems like scaling up, that sort of thing. And those are great systems, but if you don't have a system to implement the system that holds people accountable, then it's very, very difficult to actually gather information as the leader to be able to know whether or not it's working or not, right? Whether or not we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, especially in a distributed environment. People can get lost very, very quickly. So I highly recommend those two tools.
Yeah.
Chorus
Your comment reminded me of something. Dan Roy, who I happen to know, is the entrepreneur in residence, I think is his title, at McCoy Business School at Texas State. And he was telling me a couple of years ago, they have dropped off the learn how to be a unicorn entrepreneurial program to how do you build a value? How do you create value within a new or an existing organization? And if you can get a hold and talk to Dan, he's actually pretty good on this. You might find him really interesting to chat with.
Nice. I love that intro. Yeah.
I'm glad to. I've got a note to talk to him and somebody else down there in the program this week anyway. So
Chorus is, as far as I know, giving away their program for free. That's Joel Trammell's group.
That's correct.
Oh, great.
It's complicated from what I understand. Well, actually, I'm actually a certified consultant in them. But it's definitely.
It takes time to get it done, but 3 or 4 quarters, everyone's in a rhythm. And when I sold Far West, I had an office in El Paso. We had 22 people there, and they were calling me going, "Hey, we get to keep Chorus, right? I mean, we want to, so it was a pain for them at the beginning, but then all of a sudden they realized that this is something to keep them on track. It was very helpful.
Kerry, can I override your chairperson and ask Andy his opinion? I mean, he's going to get down to the basics guy. I'd love to hear what he has to say.
Okay, what I took out of this that was really amazing, and thanks, Dave, was that the focus again on your values and mission. And I'm really wondering how so many companies even survive today without that fundamental values, mission and values coming from the heart of the company, because that is the communication piece between the three basic stakeholders. And just as a clarification, those 3 stakeholders I talked about, that's the minimum set. You have to have those 3 to start. There can be more. You can define more in your corporate culture that you want additional, the community, the city, other things to be key stakeholders in your business. But what's really curious to me, and Kerry, you may have to help me out on this one. One of the fellows that was in our group earlier this year mentioned that he set up a new company and allowed his employees to define the vision and values of the company. It didn't come from the management down. It was the employees that he put together. And I've been, when he mentioned that, that's been spinning around inside of my head ever since then, wondering how well that might work. And Cole, I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think? What if in this new culture, this new business world we're in, what do you think would happen? Or have you seen instances where the senior management literally allow the employees to define the vision, values, and mission of the company, or at least contribute substantially?
I think it's a terrible idea. But I think there's and mostly because one of the things I was going to say is if you can't, as the leader, walk the talk, it doesn't mean anything. So if it doesn't come from your heart, now again, it doesn't have to be a a dictatorship where you throw it down. The way I look at it is more of a co-creation. So I have a document, it's 2 pages, it's not 20. It's very, very simple. It defines all the terms and it says mission, what does that mean? Vision, what does that mean? Purpose, what does that mean? BHAG, what, you know, all the things. And I throw it out as a Word doc. Here's what's, you know, here's what's coming from here. What do you guys think? Can we live this or not? And I also, one of the things I was going to say was that this is something that has to be investigated and questioned on an ongoing basis. And so I do it once a year. We just got through doing it and we throw it out there. I'm on a quarterly rhythm, you know, because I'm trained by Chorus, like be in a quarterly rhythm and stay inside of a very tight time frame. Not here's 5 years from now, here's right now, here's what's working, here's what's not working. And let's be honest with each other about that conversation. And, you know, when I think you throw out mission, vision, values every once in a while, it takes a while for people to actually see whether or not you're full of it or not, and whether or not we're actually going to do this stuff. So, you know, once you have some traction around that, and another practice that we implement is we do a really simple core value recognition, again, around a quarterly thing. So we'll do core value nominations all the time. Hey, so-and-so did XYZ, and you get the team doing that. I'm not doing it, the team's doing it with each other. Then it is their recognition of what we've all agreed upon. But to just throw something on a group of employees that they don't have the comprehension most of the time about where you're headed as and as CEO, I mean, that's your job.
So then just to summarize what you just said and the way that looks like you've done things, it's senior management's and the CEO's role to define the initial vision, mission, and values very clearly, and then using tools like Chorus, like you've used, take input from your employees to potentially sculpt it and adjust it, but still, as CEO, you are the gatekeeper. You make the final decision on, yes, this is part of our vision, or no, it's not. And then employees,
correct,
from that point, get to choose, do I agree with this? Do I not agree with this? If I don't, I can go someplace else.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the beautiful part of the United States of America. Go start your own company, you know, I mean, and we're talking about small companies here, you know, less than $50 million a year in revenue mostly, you know, and generally speaking, that is driven by a very small group of people who start a business because they had an idea or they had a passion around a particular purpose or not. And it can't not be from them, if you will. It may sound good to say, well, I'm going to give this out to all these other people and, oh, it's yours. And again, if that works, if it works, it works. I mean, I'm not here to say it shouldn't. There's a name of it real quick and I'll be quiet. There's a name, it's called holacracy. There's a whole book around that topic. I've skimmed it. I haven't read it, but I've skimmed it.
I was going to say that to just put some perspective on that call. It was Brett Hurt, Data.World. Mm-hmm. Of course, he's got a reputation for these kind of cultures. So he probably has some kind of foundation.
Who am I to argue with Brett Hurt? I mean, if it's working for him, it's working for him.
I'd love to, you know, he's famous for, you know, he obviously has a very clear idea of anybody who comes into his company has a pretty clear idea of what that culture is going to be looking like. Sure. So I think what he did, he's actually had his people send in ideas. I think they were actually by on the telephone, you know, ideas that you have for, you know, whatever. So anyway, interesting, but thank you for that perspective. I wanted to make sure Charu and Edwin and Susan and Sarah didn't have any questions before we just have about 3 minutes, but did you guys want to jump in on something real quick?
Yeah, I'll jump on, Cole. Thanks. Thanks. This is a good session. I think we heard Chris little less than we anticipated. That's also true. But I had a couple of questions for him, especially from the perspective of 2,400 employees versus two people trying to work with such a large group of people, and typically working with 4 million individuals, which may have a different perspective. But I said to myself, I go back to Chris and ask that question personally, just to get his perspective. So Cole, coming back to you from Dare Capital, this question is completely different, may not be the values or culture related stuff. You hear a lot about capitalism versus socialism. How do you define, or how do you explain the capitalism to the people when your deficit financing is growing in a disproportionate way? You have your deficit financing growing substantially year after year, and you want to call yourself as a capitalism. At what point of time you decide that this capitalism is nothing but completely financed out of the government's trillions of dollars, which equates nothing but socialism in the indirect context?
I think that is way above my pay grade.
We really do have to stop at 1:15. So
Okay.
maybe you could share that with Chris Charu.
Yeah, I'll share it. I really wanted some perspective from this particular area, which I struggle myself to answer. It's a question which I couldn't answer myself. And I failed to understand that all these theories of the past, how they can be explained in the context of different things happening in today's world. And
let me say one thing here, and I'll give you a resource of a much smarter person than me, and you can go and check it out. There's a guy, and his name is Raj Sisodia, and on the YouTubes, he has a fantastic TED Talk on capitalism and conscious capitalism. And I think you may be conflating two different things here. Deficit spending is one thing, and then the rule of law and Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence and Constitution, etc., that gives us the ability to do what we do in the United States of America. As another thing, whether or not we're doing what we said we're going to do is a bigger question. Obviously, we're probably drifting into something problematic, given.
Are you saying bad government under one reputed system doesn't make it the other system?
No, my question is purely on the financial side, guys. I'll not complicate.
One thing I will say is that Raj co-wrote Conscious Capitalism with John Mackey, and that is an excellent book. And I know Sarah's got to get off. She's our host. So thank you so much, Cole. Really appreciate it. Great to see everybody. Happy New Year's. We're having our mastermind on Tuesday. What is it, the 19th? I think it's the 19th. Let me double check. The 19th. I hope to see you there, 12 to 1:30. Cole, you're welcome to come. We'd love to have you. And Happy New Year's, everybody.
Just please don't tell Brett Hurt that I disagreed with him. Okay, I got to make sure that I'm in the right circles in Austin. So
we're all still watching to see if that worked. I mean, he said it, but keep watching.
I'll look for the headlines.
Bye, Cole.
Happy New Year. Great conversation.
Thank you, Cole.
Yes.
Thank you, Cole.
Bye-bye. Appreciate it.